Hello, church. In Acts chapter 8 we read, "On that day a great persecution broke out against the church in Jerusalem, and all except the apostles were scattered throughout Judea and Samaria. Those who had been scattered preached the gospel wherever they went." This is such an interesting passage, because God takes a situation of hardship, a situation where the church is scattered, and uses it to further the gospel, so the truth of who Jesus was spread like wildfire throughout the ancient world. We see throughout history that God does amazing things like this. He takes all kinds of different sorts of experiences and uses them to further his gospel and his kingdom. That even when his church is scattered, it can be scattered in such a way that it produces life. We find ourselves also at a unique point in history. Even as we look at the week ahead, the British Columbia government is giving us a different kind of opportunity to meet differently, in groups up to groups of 50. And I wonder about this thought: how could we be scattered in a way that would continue to produce life? Because it looks likely that we will be unable to meet as a full congregation for some time into the future until the situation completely resolves. And so how do we engage with Jesus in this season? How do we allow him to move in us and through us in a way that will produce life? I'm really grateful for the number of people who have given me their wisdom and their insight over the course of the last number of days. And as I've thought and prayed and processed all this information, considering how we should best move forward as a congregation in our life together, I'm coming back today in particular, to this image of a tree. When we think about our life as a church, as we discern the vision that God has for us, this picture of a tree, that we live as a community that is rooted and reaching. And if you think about a healthy tree has lots of different branches of various different kinds. And these branches spread out and flourish so the tree just thrives, and there is life on a broader scale than there ever could be life if the tree was all just sort of smushed and mushed all in one particular place together. I think in this season, Jesus is giving us a unique opportunity to grow and to thrive in a space where we're spread out in different kinds of sizes and different kinds of shapes. Because again, in the upcoming days, it looks quite likely that we will have the possibility to meet in different kinds of groups as we move forward. And so we have a unique opportunity presented to us. I want to explain to you a bit of where we're at right now in this ongoing process of discerning how we can best be the church in this season. And so beginning on May 24th, whenever restrictions allow, we plan to live stream the service here from the sanctuary with myself or whoever's preaching, the worship band, the whole spiel, and send it out there. And it may be that you choose to engage with the service within your household as you have over the course of the last 8 weeks or so, just at home being able to worship and to embrace and to engage in this together. Or it could be that you'd like to gather together your expanding circle as the weeks go forward and have a few families together to worship and to praise God together, to delight in him, to honor him, to glorify him, to discuss and process the service together as you move forward in that way. And in the weeks ahead, we want to be faithful to resource you and equip you and stand with you as you continue to engage and participate in the service in that particular venue through various questions or discussion points or whatever else you might think is helpful to you along this journey. We want to continue to engage together and discuss this as we move forward. But we also realize that there is a need for us to meet in groups larger than just maybe a couple of families together in a home, in groups maybe up to about 50 as we move forward together. And so beginning sometime in June, and as restrictions continue to allow, we would like to create an opportunity for everyone who would like to, and everyone who is healthy in that particular week or various weeks, to be able to participate in person in a service. We're not sure exactly yet what this will look like. It could be that on a rotational basis, we will cycle people through the life of the congregation, some people attending some weeks, some people attending another week. It could be that we meet and spread out across multiple locations in multiple venues over the course of, say, a Sunday, or through a number of different services, or we're looking at a number of options to explore these things. Our decision about how this will be made will come together based on what the need looks like of the number of you who would like to attend an in-person service, and also what kind of creative options we can explore as we move forward in this together. We want to also be faithful as we work through this to make sure that we always create room for those that Jesus is bringing to us, so that everyone will always be welcome in our midst as we move forward throughout this season. Also in the coming weeks, we will be opening up a number of the ministries, those that are able to engage in this process safely and in line with the restrictions that we have before us. And so there'll be more information coming in the next couple of weeks to you about which ministries will be beginning when and in what form those things will move forward. I also find it really important today to be very clear with you that we recognize this season is very fluid. And it could be that what is appropriate and acceptable and available to us today may not be available tomorrow. And throughout this season, we will need to make a number of changes and adaptations, sometimes very quickly, as we move forward. And so just to make you aware of that possibility as we engage. I also realize that this is not an ideal situation, and for many of you out there watching this, this does not quite meet all that you would hope or anticipate or all that you would desire that church life would look like for you. And again, we want to dialogue, we want to engage together, we want to discern together the mind of Christ on what is very best for us throughout this season. But I find it interesting, again, we have so many unanswered questions, so much that is unsure, and I imagine this is exactly the way the church felt in Acts chapter 8. They found themselves in an entirely new and different reality. They found themselves scattered. And in this season, I think we can embrace this in two different ways. We can either embrace the scattering disorientation and simply sit back and be unsure of what to do. Or we can do what they did in Acts chapter 8 and say, we find ourselves in an entirely new world, in an entirely new situation. How do we leverage this for the cause of Christ? How do we embrace this season in a way that will move the gospel forward with increasing power and clarity and influence? And even as we work through this season together, I'm excited and interested to see what kind of wisdom and creativity and insight and strengths are drawn out of all of us as a congregation as we journey through this season together, because we are in this together, each one of us as a church. I'm also grateful in this season that we are a people who are defined by grace. Each one of us has come into relationship with God based not on our own merit, but on Jesus' powerful sacrifice for us and the unconditional love of the Father. I want to encourage all of us as we engage in this season, let's try and embrace this season from that kind of posture of grace. In the ways that we interact with one another, in the ways that we interact with the restrictions, in the ways that we interact with how things may change on a dime moving forward, let's strive to embrace this season with a sense of grace, with a sense of humility, with a desire to honor God and to live out His character in all of our interactions with one another and in our attitudes as well as we journey throughout this. We can and we will come through this season stronger. Not because of who we are, our own abilities, our own wisdom, or our own capacity, but we can come through this season stronger because of who Jesus declares us to be. Because of the power and the presence of His Spirit alive and at work within us. We are a people who are scattered, but we are scattered to produce life. And so in this season, let's be the church that He desires us to be. Let's continue to live as a community that is rooted and powerfully reaching for His glory. Amen.